Welcome to the Somewhat Frank podcast, hosted by me, Frank Gruber, and joined by my friends and colleagues, Jen Consalvo and John Guidos. This podcast explores the latest trends and advancements in technology and business, including emerging startups and how they shape today while looking forward towards the future. We also enjoy testing new gadgets and products and sharing our findings too, along with our favorite pop culture picks like music, books, and what we're streaming. This podcast is produced in collaboration with our company, Established. Ready to dive in? Time to be somewhat frank. And welcome back. I'm Frank Gruber, Somewhat Frank Podcast. Thanks for being here. I'm joined today by my colleagues and friends, John Guidos, Johnny Goodtimes, and Simon Kahan. And special guest today, we've got a special guest. We're going to introduce him here in a second. Where are you right now?
I'm currently in New York.
Okay, currently in New York, and he lives in New York too. And Jesse Middleton, he's from Flybridge, which is an investment firm. And we're going to get into something he's been working on a little bit in a minute. But first, Johnny, what's good? What are you up to? What are you up to tonight or today?
Hi, Frank. Hi, Jesse. Hi, everybody. Hi, Simon. All good. Getting ready for a big weekend. Have a concert here tonight. Actually, we're going to Dirks Bentley over at the Ruoff Center. So that should be a lot of fun.
Nice.
And then heading up to Michigan to, go to the lake and what do you call it? Like vineyards and all that stuff this weekend. So going to have a nice little weekend over here.
Nice. Simon, what about you? You're on the road.
I'm on the road. I'm in Austin tonight. My brother's playing at the Moody Center. And I'm going to be kind of awkwardly standing behind
chilling in the green room.
Yeah, basically like taking all his free stuff and pretending I'm successful. So
all right. I think you should still be edging to get up there again. Play new
I've been planting the seed in his mind. I think actually since it's my last night, I think tonight might be the night.
Okay. Awesome. He gets up there sometimes, Jesse, and sings.
I love it. My brother is also a musician, and he actually wants me to go into the studio soon to record something with him. So I'm stoked for that.
Ask for royalties up front.
Oh, I will. Don't worry. I'm on the board of a company called Splice in the music industry. I understand this space. I'm getting my piece.
Yeah.
Nice. Simon, you and your brother keep at it, man. You guys really got something going, and you're gonna make it big someday. So you guys keep plugging along.
I'm sort of his muse, one might say.
I love it.
Good stuff.
He's on to something. Anyway, all right. So jumping in, Jesse, welcome. What are you up to? What's the latest right now with you? And we're gonna dive into your report here that came out recently.
Yeah, what am I up to, man? So you noted I run a venture capital firm, early stage firm, about $1 billion under management today, but headquartered here in New York at this point. Two of my partners are up in Boston. Early stage technology. I've been a technologist like for my whole career. I was suspended from high school for computer hacking at one point. I've been into tech, and then my parents were like, "Please try to find a way to channel this that doesn't land you in jail." So I went the white hat way. And so we as a firm, we invest in very deeply technical founders. And so I don't know if knee deep, waist deep, maybe neck deep in the sort of generative AI movement has been my thing, our thing. And so that's been like everything I think about every day, specifically here in New York. I also have 2 children that keep me very busy. I have an 8-year-old, and I now have a 10-month-old. Who we just took to the Philippines, which, by the way, you want to really test yourself. 24 hours in each direction with at the time 9-month-old. Thank God my wife has a lot more patience than I do.
Wow.
But yeah, so I'm busy with that and just hitting the summer here in New York, man. It's beautiful out.
Congrats on the little one. And obviously braving it to go 24-hour travel days. That is really brave. No?
It was a good time. Oh, and today's actually a very special day for me. I'm also celebrating 2 years of sobriety. So that's I'm not going out for a drink after this.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Congrats.
I've kind of hit that same, like I just stopped doing it as much. And so
there you go.
Yeah, it's funny coming from somebody. I used to run a thing called Tech Cocktail. So it's kind of ironic, I guess you could say. All right. So yeah, so kind of similar vein. That's great. We're going to talk about your AI index here in a minute, which is very, very cool. Quick update. I've been also you actually look like you've been doing a lot of like exercise too. You're looking like you're in good shape.
I have not. I will tell you that it's on my list of things. You asked me something interesting today. I've been on Wegovy for the last 10 months. And so I am down 50 pounds from my height, from my peak. And I really should work out more. I do walk 15 to 20,000 steps a day, but I really should work out more.
Nice. Okay. Well, I have been working out, and I feel good. I'm on day 16 of the running challenge.
You look great.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's you don't realize I don't think I ever remember running simultaneously for 16 days, even though I used to be an athlete. I don't know, like I didn't like go and run. I don't know, it was never a thing. So for
Yeah.
me, it's a good thing. But I saw a friend of mine on a Facebook post like this week. He's like, yeah, he's like, it's I had to like double check this. He's like, I'm basically writing to tell you that this is year 15 of running every single day.
Get out of here.
I was like,
Wait, do we have a mutual friend? Because I
John
have somebody
Batiste.
who just
Yeah,
posted that.
yes. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, 15 years?
Yep.
And I'm like on day
Yep.
15 when I'm reading this, or 13 or something. I'm like, this is unbelievable. I don't know how he does it. Anyway, pretty impressive.
I don't know either. And he's racing cars now, so
Yeah. I was just floored. I mean, not even a rain out. Like that's hardcore, man.
I'm impressed. Good.
crazy.
Keep it up, Frank. I couldn't do that when I was 25, let alone 45. So
Well, well, the funny thing is there's always somebody to knock you down, right? Like props to him, but I'm like day 13, and I'm like, I read the Facebook and I'm like, oh man, 15 years? Like he's literally got setting Guinness Books of World Records or something. I'm like, that is impressive. Like
it's
anyway.
crazy.
Yeah, something to shoot for though. Something to shoot for. Anyway, all right, let's
There
jump
you
in
go.
here. The thing you've been working on that caught my attention recently was Flybridge put out an AI index, and I wanted to talk to you about it. So let's talk about what was the inspiration of the Flybridge, Flybridge doing that, and maybe some of the more about the initiative, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So look, we've been investing in AI related companies, big data companies, used to be called machine learning, computer vision, for the last like 12, 15 years. We were some of the earliest investors in like MongoDB, which today has one of the biggest vector databases for AI developers, Zest AI, a bunch of others. And one of the things that I say to founders is like, when you're building your company, even when you're 4 people, you should look to the public market equivalents, right? Like, what are they doing, right? That's what you're going to be judged on in the future. Like all your VCs, all your angels, all the like grow at all costs. What's the Uber, Travis's famous line, grow or die. Like that's all the private markets. And then you get to the publics and it's like, what are they doing, right? And so I think for a lot of the founders that we back, they really don't know who their public market comps are. They don't pay attention to it. They don't come from that world. And so there's a couple of other firms that have a fintech index and one that has an enterprise SaaS index. And we just looked around and we said, look, we've been at the center of this for 15 years. We backed dozens at this point of companies building an AI. We're going to back dozens more in the next couple of years, I can guarantee you. And how do we sort of bring some of that market data to light? Who are the companies that are the ones that are investing the most in the public markets? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? What are their CEOs saying? And not just, I think one of the things would be like the heavyweights, right? Like we all know NVIDIA at this point. We all know that Google's investing. We all know that Microsoft's investing in OpenAI. These are big companies. OpenAI is not public yet. Maybe one day it will be. But but everybody else. And so as we look down the list, like there's one thing I would say, it's not a fad. Like this AI trend, this movement, every global 2000 company is heavily investing in it. And you can see that more important than they're investing in it is they're being rewarded for it. So if you compare like the cloud index or the S&P 500 to the AI index we put together, the returns are 2 or 3 times in the last year. You look at how they're judged on enterprise value to revenue, like way higher. They outperform the market. They outperform the S&P. So I think for us, one of the biggest questions we get asked by our LPs is like, is this a fad? Is this real? Is this just a flash in the pan? Is this like the Web3 movement? What? No knock on Web3. I actually think the idea of blockchain in many applications is going to be super valuable. We're really, really early in that. It turns out there aren't a lot of great enterprise use cases. Turns out when you can replace a lot of the menial human task labor things with the technology that's just as good or better for 1/10 the cost, it's a real thing. It's really meaningful. I use it every day in my work. I have a portfolio company called Talktastic. They just launched their beta. I use it 60 to 70 times a day to write content. It's on my desktop. Like it is a real thing. And we're seeing that from the Fortune 100 CEOs all the way down the stack.
Writing down Talktastic as fast as I can.
I'll send you the beta link, dude. I'll send it. It's crazy.
That's awesome. That's really
Jesse, I actually have a quick question if I might jump in. So do you have an example from a company in your portfolio or one that you've looked at that has a real tangible user experience or, something that actually you can talk to those specific efficiencies? Because other than buzzwords, right? Every company right now is saying that they're AI enabled, and other than using it to optimize or efficiently write something, like what is something that you've seen, actually AI, other than a buzzword, like AI actually help improve?
Yeah. Dude, so I'll give you two examples. One is a company that's using it for productivity, and one is a company who has really shifted gears into developing the space over the last 4 years. Um, on the productivity one, 100% of our portfolio companies that are both B2B and B2C are already implementing AI, either open source projects or enterprise solutions for areas like customer service. They're using it for financial analysis, like for managing their books. There's a company called Digits, which if you haven't been following, is like this incredible AI-powered bookkeeping and accounting system that friends of ours built, that's now scaled. And so replacing entire roles and or like 50-60% of the work that like a customer service team does. So we have a company called Melody Arc, which does this. The founders came from Amazon and Walmart. They're now building it for other retailers. Some of our portfolio companies are now customers of theirs. The returns on this are 80 to 90% of customer support requests that come through are being answered entirely by an AI at this point, more efficiently than a human being would, which means that none of our portfolio companies, by the way, have laid off customer support people. What it means is they can lean into the bigger customers, the ones that have bigger, more challenging issues, the ones that are maybe louder, angrier, right? The squeaky wheel, gets the grease kind of thing. And they can solve those problems. So on the productivity side, we see it in every area of the business, and it's not just being invested in, it's implemented today. So I'd say that's a big one. We have another company called RC, which is an enterprise like generative AI management platform. It's made for the global 2000 companies. We did their seed round in January. Their customers are groups like Thomson Reuters and Ferrari. It is live in the Ferrari app now. If you have a problem with your car, if you're driving just like Tesla does, and there's a light that comes on, the app is in real time telling you, is this a real problem? What could you do about it? Where could you solve the problem? 24 hours a day while you're driving. So you're not putting your life or your family's life at risk by being like, oh, that red light came on, I'll fix it next week. Maybe you can wait till next week. Maybe you can't. So it's real today. The flip side, I would say to you, just I'll keep this succinct, is we have a company called Splice I mentioned at the top. It's a platform for music producers. Think of it like GitHub and Adobe for music production. Been around now 8 years. Few million users, almost every Billboard 100 track, the producers use Splice, find sounds and samples. If you go to splice.com, it is front and center. Get Splice as your co-producer is now the thing we do. So we're not generating music. We stay far away from that. We are the artist's friend. But you want to lay down hum a little tune, Simon, your brother,
I
want
want
to
to
sit in the green
I want to do
room.
that.
Like, have it then go find. We have tens of millions of sounds and samples.
Mm-hmm.
It instantaneously goes and says, here are 5 different things you might want to try putting together with this sound.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell us the style. You tell us what your vibe is. What is your tone? And then do that as many times as you want instantaneously till you find that inspiration, right? Simon, you're the muse today. Your brother loves working with you. What about when you're asleep? Who's he working with? He wakes up in the middle of the night with inspiration. Who's he work with? Well, he can work with that. So this is real. This is here today.
Penny,
this
right?
is live.
I don't know. Just trying to answer the question for you, Simon. But
That's right.
He'd be screwed.
That's right.
He'd be screwed. I'm pivotal to his success. So
there you go. See, I say the same for my brother.
Love it.
So those are two ways we're seeing it, and I mean I can go down the list of our companies, but it's real. I guess this is maybe the most interesting thing for me. I use it every day to make me a better investor, team member, partner, board member, and even husband. Like, I use this AI technology today. It's not something that's mystical or sort of unknown. I can point to exactly what I do with it, and I can point to why it's made my life better. This is every one of our companies across the horizontal functions. They're doing the same thing now.
Very cool. Switching back to that AI index, do you see, like, obviously eventually some of the companies you're looking at are going to end up in that index, right? Is that the goal?
I hope so, man. There's a number of companies that we have listed at the bottom of it that we call potential future additions. These are predominantly companies that either are private, that are planning to go public, that have externally said this, or companies that are beginning to invest in AI. They are public companies, but we're not quite sure if they're going to be, pivotal to the movement, to this trend. And so we'll track them closely. A company like Samsung falls into that. But yeah, I mean, look, I hope so. I hope that many of our companies will wind up in this public market index in the future. That's part of our goal as venture capitalists. That's what we get paid for, right? My LPs love working with me, but they love working with me as long as I also make them money. So
that makes sense. Let's talk a little bit more about the methodology that you had to create this index, and particularly like criteria for inclusion of these companies. Like, 'cause not every company.
Yeah, look, I think this is very specifically tailored on the movement towards generative AI. You guys follow this. I'm sure your listeners do too. The last 18 months, maybe now 24 months, have been pretty unbelievable. Like truly sci-fi. Like, the things that people are building today were truly unimaginable unless you were like a writer for Star Trek, which somehow they got so much of this right. Like, that's an astounding thing. The iPad, the AI talking to you, controlling the ship, all that stuff. They saw this years ago. But so you needed to be a company that was launching new Gen AI products or services that you were placing at the core of your business. You need to be investing real dollars, so significant percentages of dollars as a public company. Equally as important, you were actually making money from these advances, right? There's a lot of companies investing ahead of being able to have real products, but you look at a company like Microsoft, who has invested in not only the AI products, but they've now become core to whether it's Microsoft Office or Outlook or Dynamics or the CRM. These are massive revenue generators in their portfolios. And the last thing I would say is they're active in acquiring or partnering with other companies, right? So Apple just had this major announcement partnering with OpenAI, which is truly an astounding company. But like, they have to be really investing in that space. And frankly, up until their announcement, we didn't have Apple in this index. It's not currently in the current public version. It may fall into the new one based on what they're investing in now. My team's going to look at that. We update this every month right now. So we do a big update. We push out content to all the people that have subscribed. We try and get ahead of it. And we open ourselves up for conversation, right? For founders that want to talk about it, for investors that want to talk about it. It's good for us, good for them.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's really interesting that you're updating that quickly. I mean, it seems like you have to. There's always changes, like Apple Intelligence, which is, you brought on a great point. We're going to dive into some news. We can always jump back and talk about the index more, but let's talk about the Apple Intelligence, or AI, that they just
AI for the rest of us, right?
Right. Exactly. So what, basically you talked a little bit about it already. They partner now with OpenAI to produce this. We've talked numerous times about how terrible Siri has been for the last several years and how it probably will jump on.
Don't let her hear you say that.
Well, it'll probably hear. Yeah, it'll probably jump in here and communicate with us now finally. But, trying to call somebody on Siri or whatever, it never can find the right person. It's just not as smart, right? So, let's talk about what's your take on this whole Apple Intelligence launch, which more or less includes the enhancements of writing tools, priority notifications, visual expressions, the advanced Siri, and obviously putting this all in a, I guess, private cloud computing section, I guess.
Yeah, look, I mean, Apple continues to be the greatest consumer launcher of product. Even when they launch things that aren't that cool or special or different, the world stops and watches, and then they buy, right? They use and they buy. So this is for the entire, you think about the index, this is a net positive for every AI company when it comes to like consumer adoption, right? The most important consumer company we know of right now, they've now said it's ready. It's ready for human consumption. And so I think that's a net positive for the world. There's always a thing every Apple announcement day. There's somebody on Twitter who tries to get there first and say, here are all the companies that are dead because Apple launched all these products. No doubt that will happen. There'll be companies that won't exist. But here's the truth.
Hopefully, none of the ones you invested in. Hopefully, none of the ones you
hopefully, but honestly, it's okay, man. Like their best founders are going to pivot. They're going to figure out something else. They're going to figure out the way. And what I was going to say is, Apple builds for Apple. Apple builds for the Apple ecosystem. They always have. They always will. That is their secret thing, right? The reason that an Apple product is so incredible, and I've been an Apple user for a long time, is that it all works well together because it is a closed system. That is what they do. They offer lots of APIs and SDKs. They offer their coding stuff, but at the end of the day, you follow their paradigm, you follow their guardrails, and it runs on Apple. And my mom has been an Android user forever. She complains to me every day about something with her phone. Literally every day I hear something. And she's going to probably listen to this and she's going to be like, hey, I can't believe you talked about me on that. Like, she literally calls me about a problem. And I say to her 90% of the time, I'm like, that can't happen on an iPhone. Like, the thing you're describing, it can't happen because Apple's designed it that way. So it's amazing when you're in the Apple ecosystem. But here's the truth. I use a MacBook. I use an iPhone. I don't have an Apple Watch. I use other systems too. I use Google Chrome on my desktop. I use Arc on mobile. And the interoperability when you get out of the Apple ecosystem leaves a ton to be desired. And so, number one, there's an opportunity in multi-platform. And number two, Apple tends to solve for the lowest common denominator. Not a bad thing, by the way, but they solve for the normal user. And so what they don't do is go super deep into the enterprise applications that your businesses rely on, right? That isn't their business. That's not their space they work in. So if you think about going back to the Splice example, I personally wouldn't bet on Apple being like, what we're going to do? We're going to solve for the few million music producers that are out there. We're just going to go deep and enable you to talk to Siri to make a full track and produce music with your brother, Simon. I don't think they're doing that. They're going to make it for the billion users that all need to write a text to their mom, right? That maybe want to sing happy birthday. They may create something that helps you record happy birthday. And so I think it's a net positive for both consumers and sort of the businesses in AI. Short term, it's going to be a lot of people sitting right now. I've got one portfolio company in particular. They're texting, they're bored throughout this thing, and they're like, oh shit, I need a couple days. Like, I'm sorry, I cursed on this. I don't know if I can, but okay. You can just bleep it out. Bleep it out. But yeah, but they're already paying attention. They're already thinking about, okay, so what does that mean? Right? What does that mean for us? What can we do differently? And so it's exciting. And I'm an optimist. I'm like a techno optimist, if you will. There's so much potential in all of this. We are at the starting line, maybe, we're 1 yard in, or 1 meter into this race. Like, it's pretty astounding in 2 years what we're going to see.
Yeah, I agree.
So just to kind of take that further, the longer view of this, and it's a perfect convergence of the best hardware and the best software, that being Apple and OpenAI, right? Which I think is, to your point, like a net good thing for everyone. I personally, I want to know everybody's thoughts on this. I see this as Apple almost positioning itself to, at some point, maybe acquire OpenAI. And I want to preface that statement with the fact that OpenAI, their valuation is off the charts right now. But I also, taking this another step forward, want to understand too what your thoughts are on maybe a potential bubble coming. And I know that what I see going on right now with NVIDIA and what's his name, Jensen, their CEO, he's become like a rock star. This to me seems very similar to like before 2008, right? When you have like these rock stars coming out, and then there's this huge bubble, certain things happen, and then Apple is perfectly positioned to gobble up OpenAI and roll them into their hardware. So I know I kind of rambled there for a second, but want to get everybody's thoughts on that.
I'll give you a very short take on it, which is we certainly are seeing a lot of activity, and a lot of it is frothy, and a lot of it is frankly fake. It's kind of BS. People putting a nice wrapper on existing tech, mostly OpenAI. So there will be a lot of things that that crash. The difference between sort of like the first like .com bubble, the web van era, and even sort of the 2008 time is that as I said earlier, these products are affecting real dollars, business, and people's lives already. in only 18 to 24 months. So the fact is that, like, yes, if you go and like you zoom in, you pick a company not likely to exist in the future, likely to flame out, amazing opportunity for Apple to buy. Maybe that's OpenAI. Let's see what happens. But long term, I don't view it as a bubble today in the way that we think that it's sort of all going to come crashing down. I think there's too much that it's actually affecting in a positive way that's affecting both revenue and cost centers in these businesses, that it's a real solution to a real problem that maybe people didn't know existed 24 months ago. But at the end of the day, they're going to keep buying it because it's actually solving an issue. And I think that was like, oh, and by the way, and it can do it fiscally responsibly, if you will, right? So for some of these companies, like, you're spending only $10 or $20 a month on this tool. The unit economics for that company is actually pretty good. The web van era, not so much. It turns out delivering $15 of ice cream for 30 miles in a refrigerated truck, not a great business model. Can't really make money on that. Delivering a little bot sitting in the corner of my screen answering questions, actually doable. So I don't know if I'd put us in a bubble, but I would say it's frothy, and we're going to see a lot of companies lose before companies really win.
Sure. That's a really interesting take. Yeah. Simon, did you want to jump in, or you got something?
Yeah, I just had a quick thought on, I found it really interesting because I'm also a tech optimist. I think this has potential to like completely revolutionize and in general make our lives a lot better. But there's that, I forget what it's called, but that saying that, whatever can happen will happen. And so I'm just curious if you think that the rate of adoption of AI and, utilizing it in our daily lives, I'm curious if you think we can do that in an efficient way that also mitigates risks, guys, because I think it's pretty obvious when you see things like Sora or even like ChatGPT or any like text to video generator thing, the potential for like pretty great danger there. So I'd love to get your take on whether you think we can kind of keep up the momentum and the investment, especially in the private sector, without, causing the world to explode, I guess.
I don't know if you guys want to wait. I know this morning there was an announcement. OpenAI's newest board member is this retired U.S. Army general and NSA director. And look, private companies always break shit before they turn it into like something real. That's what innovation generally is. And so I'd like to imagine that we're not going to give our energy systems and our weapon systems, we're not going to give OpenAI access to that yet. Like, we're going to wait. We're not going to put ourselves in that position. So yeah, could Sora create a lot of content and media and create really cool stuff, and maybe filmmakers feel pressed and sort of where's their position then? What do they do? Yes. I don't view it as like an end of the world thing. I view it as a culture question. Where do we all land after all this? Like, and to be clear, I'm speaking about myself too. Like, if AI is as good as we think it is, like, does my role have to exist as a venture capitalist? Like, won't AI be better at picking companies than me? Maybe. I don't know. Like, I got to pay attention to how my role is going to change too. And so it will affect everyone, but this is not a, world ending thing. This is a culture shift thing. And this is a moment in time where I wouldn't bet against innovation. You would have been wrong through all of history to bet against innovation. I think that you would say, let's think about the opportunity. You're an optimist here. Let's think about the opportunity. Let's think about the potential. If you could shift to a place where you have a couple more hours a day to go to the gym, Frank, to feel better and be healthier. You have a couple more hours in the day to go spend time with your kids, pick up your kids from school every day because you saved 2 hours. If you have the ability to make 30% more money because, AI is helping you do that, and you can then spend that on both things you need and want, but also on your community, those are all net positive things, right? Those are all really positive things. And so every technological shift is going to have risk. And so I don't go into this rosy-eyed in that way. Like, I'm not like, there's zero risk in this. So far, I'm not seeing a point. Like, I don't see Boston Dynamics, war dog cat things walking around the street with OpenAI, like deciding who to detain. I'm hopeful that isn't the case. I don't think it will be anytime soon, but I hope I'm wrong.
So I like this conversation, and it kind of opens like a more philosophical. I've been giving a lot of thought to these certain things, right? That if OpenAI or AI in general, builds a lot of efficiencies, and less jobs are needed in the technology space. Like in the future, do you have any thoughts on what tools or what skills are going to be more valued by just from human, right? Like from
Well,
flesh and
yeah.
blood,
Well,
like for our kids, for example. Like, should
right.
we try to talk them, instead of going into the technology space, would they be better off or better served being a stonemason, because there's going to be a lot of value with that in the future, and less because of jobs are taken
Oh
up with
man,
AI, that sort of thing.
I can't imagine my child as a stonemason. Not because I wouldn't want him to be. It's just he's kind of like me. He doesn't want to be outside sweating as much.
Sure.
The look, creative thinking is always going to be a very unique human skill. It's not to say that AI won't be able to be creative, but just like there are multiple humans attacking the same problem in various ways, right? Bill Gates is trying to rid the world of disease in Africa and solve hunger. There are dozens of people, billionaires, trying to solve those problems, right? It's not a one size fits all. And so there's this really curious thing, which is, what could you spend your time doing? I think creative thinking, right? Like I think the idea that, what are the possibilities? Like I've shown my son, who's 8 years old, what ChatGPT can do. And the funny thing is that he finds ways to make it answer questions that I never would have imagined asking to it. Like he asks these questions that I wouldn't ask, right? I'm an adult. I have these preconceived notions. Like I'm not like, jokingly, like, why is the sky blue is like one of those silly questions that like kids will ask, and it'll give him an answer. And then he'll pull this thread and he'll be like, but what if this happened? And like, you watch how AI answers his questions, and they're training on that, right? So it's learning from that. And so I think creative thinking is a big area where I'd focus people on. Technology is still going to be a place. People still have to build these systems. They have to be the creative side of building. They don't have to write all of the code, but they have to architect it. They have to think about, what do they want the output to be. So that's still a good area. The last thing I'll say in that is, like, there are very few jobs that I could imagine disappearing because of AI, frankly. Um, we have a portfolio company that had this line in their pitch deck, which is, the future of AI is not replacing humans, it's replacing tasks. Like the customer service example I gave, humans still want to talk to humans. Like that is just a human nature thing. I don't think that tomorrow or a decade from now, we're all going to be good living in like that Wall-E style world where we just like sit and stare at a screen. I actually think AI is going to open up more free time for us to go and communicate with other humans. When you're talking to somebody in customer service, there's going to be a moment where you're like, listen, I need you to feel my pain. Like I need this thing for my child's wedding and it's not coming. I just need you to feel that pain. I don't need a robot, an AI to tell me. I need a human to understand what I'm feeling. And so that just means that person gets to really connect with other humans. And so I don't know. I'm no oracle in this, so all this could be wrong what I just said, but I would say like the creative thinking aspect of it to me is one that I have not as much fear will be replaced by AI in the medium term. I don't know. It's hard for me to think 20, 30, 40, 50 years out even, but in the 10 or 20, that's the area where I'd be investing.
What do you think, John? Are you gonna maybe start sculpting, or Simon?
I've already enrolled in learning how to become a stone sculptor for these elaborate stone sculptures to put it, like in your house and that sort of thing. I think it's going to be overlooked.
Oh, I love that. My
Yeah.
grandmother was a sculptor, by the way. She did
Nice.
marble sculpting. She did stone sculpting. She did wood sculpting. And now you've got me. I'm going to call her when we're done here.
Yeah, I'm
Talk to her
obviously
about this.
I'm joking. It's tongue in cheek, but I do think that there will be I'm not a black or white person, right? I think that everything's kind of in the middle to some extent, but I think there will be a slight shift and a little bit more opportunity in the more physical space because of some of these efficiencies, right? Like not in totality by any means. I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. I use OpenAI every day. I knocked out 4 children's books last week for my nephews, and I would have never been able to do that in the past, right? So
yeah,
I love it, and I support it, but I do think there will be a little bit of a shift to more hands-on things in the future, which I think is a good thing, quite frankly. So
Yeah. It just shows like you're now the operator to create those creative things, right? You're the operator. You've turned it from like the doer to the operator to be the doer, right? And so I think that's the shift that we're talking about. We don't know how it's going to fully play out yet, but the concern I have about it is the way that we work as humans, we like to fill space. And so we get mobile devices and we're walking around with them now, and we're doing a bazillion more things than we ever did. And that's a real term. You can look it up in the dictionary. Um, Basically, we fill the space to be more productive. And my concern is now, if we're going to get other things to do that for us, are we going to continue to fill the space to the point where we're literally like just working around the clock to keep the space filled? And that is because we've got this, culture of workaholism, right? Like there's people that work really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's what my biggest concern with the whole thing is how do we how do we adjust to that, I guess.
You're touching on something interesting, Frank. One of the gaps in education, really globally, but I'll point to the U.S. is like we don't teach people generally about like financial literacy, like just like household management, right? Like we don't, like most people don't learn in high school about 401ks, budgeting for their personal stuff. Like they go become accountants, they learn about that stuff, but they don't learn about that in school. There's probably an opportunity to educate people better on how to manage your time, like this idea of productivity and what is being productive. Like I have taken the last couple of years, especially with my daughter, is 10 months old now. Like I use my calendar very diligently, and so does my wife. To the point that she actually goes and changes things that happened in the past to align them with the actual time that we did it. So like if we got there early, she like moves the event up. But if you look at my calendar, I have a lot of space that's now blocked for like hang out with my children. And it sounds silly that I'd even have to direct myself to do that, but I know myself well enough to say I look at my calendar, and you're right. If there's empty space, I fill it. So I've just taken to filling the space, with something that I think is worthwhile and worth doing. And so, it's a shift in how we focus our efforts and our time and our energy. Like I live in New York, man. There's nobody who stops in New York. We're constantly moving. And yet I see people in Madison Square Park every day with their children. And I'm like, how did they get there at 3 p.m.? Like not all of these people are stay-at-home, dads or moms. Not all of these people, work for themselves. And like, if you talk to them, a lot of them are like, listen, I just carve out an hour of my day. Like I work not that far away. I come home, I have lunch with my kids. Great. Put it on your calendar. Tell all your colleagues, you're not available that hour, but it's a really good point. I think you're right. People will just fill up all that space.
Yeah. And that's my concern, is like the culture we have is that we'll just do more. And it's like, to what end, right? We're going to wither away even more until we are just like so exhausted, like,
or at what cost, right?
Yeah. Right. Lots of therapy apparently we're going to need, because everyone's, yeah.
I'm a big fan of therapy.
Yeah.
Huge fan of therapy.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And appreciate your time. And this has been really interesting. We've got a lot more to talk about. We are running out of time. So I think we're going to shift gears to a kind of a final thought. It has to do nothing about AI. Well,
amazing.
Maybe it's AI generated, but I don't know if you guys got a chance to check out Roger Federer's recent Dartmouth College commencement address. I thought it was interesting. Something to kind of end on a high note. This is the 8-time Wimbledon champion, and he's retired a few years ago, and he's never actually went to college. He went to directly from being 16 to being a pro tennis player. And so walking on campus, he was able to they gave him a doctorate letter, basically a degree from being there, which is the first degree he's ever received. So he actually considered himself a graduate as well. So final thought was really about some of the life lessons that you can learn from this. And I thought, if you watch the commencement address, which we'll drop in the show notes, more or less high level, he made things look effortless. And I think what we're talking about with AI and some of the things that we're doing, things are going to look effortless because we're leveraging all these tools. But at the end of the day, we're still going to have to do things, right? I think we're still going to have to learn. We're going to still have to engineer. We're still going to have to, figure things out. And nothing's going to be like as simple as we're talking about it, I don't think. And so I think that's an interesting lesson there. And then, he had some other points too. So worth a watch if you hadn't seen it yet. Love to get your guys' take on it if you had a chance to check it out.
I didn't have time to check that out. I actually grew up in Hanover, New Hampshire, which is where Dartmouth is. So I would, in high school, I would wake up at like 4 a.m. to save seats for graduation and for the ceremonies. Make a lot of money. It was like probably the most money I've ever made. They would pay a lot to have a good seat. No thoughts there. I think, I love Roger Federer. I think Dartmouth always has fantastic speakers, and, I wish I could have seen it.
Yeah.
I did get a chance to see it, and then maybe more importantly, I read the transcript, read the post that Dartmouth had, because I felt like there was a lot of emotion in the speech, and that was amazing and moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and just like read it for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the point that stood out to me was like this sort of life is bigger than the court comment that he had, because it's so easy, to your point, Frank, to focus on all the work to do something all day long in preparation, and then to the point of like trying to solve this thing, your business, whatever that thing is. And I think it's amazing to me that like when you pick your head up and you look around, like I have taught my son to look up when we're walking through the city. Like life is bigger than the square that we're standing on the sidewalk right now. There are other things happening. You look up at these windows and you think to yourself, there's an entire life and world happening behind that one apartment window. I have no idea what it is. And there are 8 million people here, and every single one has that. I think it's easy to find yourself getting lost in like, what I'm doing right now is the most important thing. And if I don't solve this or I don't succeed, like I'm a failure, nothing else matters.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly a way to motivate and drive yourself. And there's a time and a place for that. But this idea that life is bigger than that thing, that one thing that you're doing, really struck me. I think about every founder that I back. When I started the early days of WeWork, we were in the office 18 plus hours a day, 6 days a week. And we did Sunday night meetings from 6 p.m. until about 2 a.m. with the management team. And that felt like if we didn't do all those things, we would fail. That was the only way to accomplish it. And now I look back and I'm happy we did it for a period of time. But man, there was so much happening around us that we missed in all of that. And so I just think like the lesson, that lesson for me, like just to look outside of that little space, he makes the comment like the court is like a dorm room size space. He's like, it's just not that big. And yet his whole thing was there, in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fascinating and it applies to everybody. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And that was one of his life lessons. And there's one more point I wanted to mention. It was about, it's just a point, and it has to do with tennis, but the just a point, meaning like he played 1,500 plus single matches in his career. He won just almost 80% of those. But the amount of margin that he actually won points was only like, can you guess how many points do you think he won in those matches?
I just reread it this morning, so I know I'm cheating.
Yeah. It was only 54%. That is such a slim margin. So the point being, we're all so close to winning. We're so close to winning. Like we're right on that edge no matter what. It's such a close call. So you got to get out there and do it every single day, and obviously don't give up. So I love the speech. I thought it was super emotional as well. I think he may have been teared up at the end. So worth watching from both a sport perspective, life perspective, and just great lessons from a tennis legend. So
it's great.
All right. Well, appreciate y'all joining today. Thanks for all your insights. Jesse, thank you so much for being a special guest today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and obviously
Simon, John, both of you enjoy your shows tonight. You're both going out for music.
I feel the envy. I need to go watch some music tonight. But
that's right.
Something. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining, and thanks everyone for listening.
Cheers.
To Somewhat Frank Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Somewhat Frank Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and leave us a review. We love the feedback and are grateful to have you as a listener. Have a great day.